Hello, everyone. This is criminal profiler Pat Brown, and this will be part two of my analysis of the Delphi trial of Richard Allen. It is, what day are we on? We're on Tuesday, October 22nd. And some interesting things came out today that I wanted to go over. First one, I mentioned yesterday in part one about this defense theory of the girls being removed from the area, taken someplace, and then being brought back. And I only had a little bit of it at the time, and I'm like, how does this even make sense? And what I said then was that normally when somebody is abducted, or a couple of girls are abducted from a place, they're taken away to a safer place to commit a crime, and then they're dumped someplace in a ditch or in the woods, or not these woods, but some other woods farther away, or they're buried someplace so that their bodies are not found, or it takes a long time to find their bodies. The last thing you want to do, if you can actually remove your victims from a specific site, is to return them to that site so the bodies can be found with evidence. It's nonsense. So that bothered me yesterday. And then I'm wondering, why are they even saying this? It's so stupid. But now I know why they're saying this. It says here, the defense contended that the girls were abducted, taken elsewhere, and then returned to the side of Deer Creek in the early hours of Tuesday, February 14th, where they were murdered. The reason they're saying this is that there was a search and they weren't found, you see, right away. So that means they weren't actually even there. They weren't there at the scene of the murder. They weren't there. Their bodies were not there. They were not murdered at that time during the day when Richard Allen was wandering about, when there was Bridge Guy. Bridge Guy, you see, didn't take them right down next to that creek and kill them then. What Bridge Guy did was abduct them, take them out of the park area, and bring them back later. Therefore, it couldn't be Richard Allen. It couldn't be, because he's got alibis for other parts of the time. See how that works? So in order to make sure that his being in the park is meaningless, is that he couldn't have taken the girls away and then returned them in the wee hours of the morning. Now, of course, the ridiculousness of this happening is silly anyway. But here's one more thing to say. You take the girls away, you do something to them, and you bring them back, and in the dark, I guess, I don't know, you're bringing your flashlights, lanterns, torches, what are you doing? And in the dark, then you can try to control them and murder them. And yeah, it's a nonsensical scenario, but I see the reason now. They want it to be that the girls were not killed at the time Allen was in the park, where he can have an alibi for when they were really killed. All right, so that's the first thing I thought was very interesting. The next thing is about the bullet. Okay, it's a 40 caliber, and that's the only physical thing that's linking him, as far as we know, because we don't know everything yet, to the actual crime scene. And supposedly it matches what he has in his house, the kind of gun and the kind of ammo. Now, we're going to hear way more about this later when we get tool mark experts come in and say whether these marks on this bullet that cycled through, wasn't shot through, so it's not as good, but cycled through the gun would match something that was cycled through his gun. And a lot of people think tool mark evidence is crap, so there's going to be a big argument over that. But we'll get there later. Right now, what they're saying is that maybe it wasn't his at all. Maybe it was those police that were doing such a shoddy job of searching and taking care of things, and maybe one of them dropped, somehow cycled on through his gun, and it fell on the ground in that exact location. They didn't say, I didn't hear anything about it being planted, which I'm surprised, but that somehow, for some reason, right at that point, they just lost a bullet. Well, apparently, from what I can see, There's 2 cops that were in the area, and one didn't have a weapon with them at all, and the other one had a 9mm. So it doesn't seem like that's holding up real well. Then we may get the planted story later, because that would actually make more sense than just accidentally dropped out of a cop's gun. It's like, no, not really. Okay, so that's the second thing. Third, video of the bridge guy. Oh, that was shown in court today to 12 people on the jury who've never heard of this case or ever seen that video of the bridge guy. But anyway, here's bridge guy. And one of the things I got a lot of comments on is the issue over the bridge guy's height and Alan's height. Now, what I've said to people, again, let's wait until this is brought to light in court. Now, from what I'm hearing out there, and I tried to research it, and I couldn't get absolute information on this. People said he was 5'4", which is quite short, and that this guy was somewhere between 5'6" and 6 feet, depending on who you listen to and where they think they got the information from. I've heard everything from, it was analyzed properly, and then an FBI guy said something. I honestly do not know. And one thing I try not to jump to a conclusion on is stuff I have no good information on. So I'm waiting again patiently for in court. In court, what will we hear about his height? What will we hear about the supposed ability to analyze this guy's height? What will we hear? I do not know yet, but that is certainly going to be a big issue, because bridge guy committed the crime. I don't think there's a lot of question over he's involved. Down the hill, girls, down the hill, and that guy's involved. One could say, well, he just helped abduct him and other people killed the girls. You could go there, but he's involved. Is it Alan or isn't it Alan? And people have this, if people think he's guilty, they say it is Alan, and it absolutely looks like him and is totally him. If people don't think it's Alan, they say, oh my God, it couldn't be him. I will wait until we get the information in a court of law. So that's another one. The confession. Okay, there was a very short confession, which he had sent in writing. And he said, I killed the girls. And then he said, I hope I get a chance to say sorry to the families. Is this a false confession? Well, there's nothing in that confession. I'll put quotes around it just because we don't know if it's a real confession or a false confession. There's nothing in there that gives any information that would absolutely say he did it, and he's just not saying he did it. The fact that he says he wants to apologize to the families. Sorry. Sorry, I brutally murdered your girls. Okay. Let me talk about apologies. If he is the killer, he's a psychopath. Psychopaths could care less. As one famous serial killer said, if I cared about your kids, I wouldn't have killed them. So, yeah. So apologizing to the parents for killing their children, really? No, a psychopath enjoyed killing these children and could care less that the parents are suffering, because they could care less that the children were suffering. They have no empathy. So the apology, if he's guilty, is absolutely meaningless. If he's not guilty, could he, in his heart, feel sad that, the girls were, the parents were suffering? Possibly. Does that prove he's not guilty because he's apologizing? No, because we don't know if he's a psychopath or not. We just don't know. False confessions are an interesting thing. There's 2 types of false confessions. One is where somebody walks in off the street and says, I did it. And the police are like, really? We don't even know who you are. And they confess to a crime. Many times you have people who want attention for whatever reasons, and they will confess to a crime they did not do. And I've seen some cases where Eaton Patz, see if I get his name right, Eaton Patz, the little boy that was murdered in New York City, and one of the first poster children for being murdered. They convicted a guy, and I don't think he did it. He did confess to it, and I think he's I don't believe it's him. So I believe he had issues where he wanted that attention. Somehow he had some weird thing going on in his head. I don't believe him. I don't believe it was a real confession, but he got convicted on it. So I do believe you can have false confessions that work, shall we say, to close the case. Then you have people come from the outside and say they did things. The guy that said he killed Jean Bonnet, he was full of crap. Two guys have said they killed Jean Bonnet, maybe more than that, and both of them are full of crap. They just love attention. But there's also the issue of if somebody is being, if they're under interrogation and are highly pressured and pushed and all kinds of things, they can just become exhausted and say, fine, I did it. And then start saying, okay, I was just agreeing with the police. That can be a false confession. Or you can have a guy, as the defense claims, that Alan was kept in difficult circumstances for so long, his mental health just deteriorated. And he's like, really, okay, fine, I did it. Fine, I did it. Just anything to stop this. Just go ahead with the damn trial. Is it possible? Sure, it is possible. So we're going to have to, during the trial, supposedly confessed a whole lot, not just this one statement that he had written, that I did it and I want to apologize to the parents if I can. Not just that, supposedly to his wife and supposedly to a whole bunch of people. And the prosecution is saying that he knew things that only the killer would know, and the defense is saying he said things that absolutely were wrong, did not match the crime scene. Again, we're going to have to wait until this whole part of the trial plays out so we can find out exactly what he said, when he said it, and what were the circumstances. And we'll find out more about that. So that's, those are the main things I want to talk about. I just want to say one more thing as I close this out today. I'm a strong believer in a professional jury. And a lot of people get on me with that, and they're like, oh, they can be bribed. Well, civilian juries can be bribed too. There was just a huge bribe in Minnesota. A civilian jury, somebody dropped off a bunch of money at her house. And she reported it, but I still don't know if she reported half of it or all of it. You know what I mean? Like this money was dropped off, but only this much. I don't know. And I don't know that it didn't influence her in the trial just because she reported it. So, bribery it can be to any civilian or professional jury. But my whole point on the professional jury is that I believe that they're able to handle what's going on here. I want to say this. These girls were victims. The community were victims. If this guy is innocent, well, then he would be a victim. But there are 12 more victims. 12 more victims. This is the jury. Why do I say they're victims? Well, I'm going to read what I wrote to somebody. They were pulled out of their normal lives, almost like they were arrested, forced into servitude, which is supposed to be illegal. Slavery is supposed to be illegal. They're given either no money or such crappy money it hardly makes up for it. They're taken away from their families, from their children. And if they're sequestered, quite frankly, they're imprisoned. As long as this trial goes on, they are imprisoned, either for the day or round the clock, 24 hours. And some of these people are in prison for months. It's unbelievable. They are forced to do a job they are not trained to do. Can you imagine? I mean, I think about other jobs. Oh, how would I feel if the government told me I had to go to an employment camp, and there in that employment camp, I was going to do auto mechanics. And I'm like, I don't know a thing about fixing a car, but no, I'm going to myself and 11 other people, we're going to give them a whole bunch of cars, and we're going to be forced to work 8 hours a day on those stupid cars. And we're going to have to sleep there too. What? How is that legal? But it is in our country. So these 12 people. So when people say I hate jurors. No. I hate the jury system. I don't hate jurors. I mean, my God, they're trying to do their duty as citizens. And I understand the concept of that. But in fact, it's an interesting situation in the state that we're in now. If you have a very short trial, with very little information, back in the old days, there were no forensics or any of that crap. So there was just the trial was not as long. These days, the trials can go on forever with the amount of people who have to testify and the experts and all that stuff. So you have these poor people who are forced into doing this. And then once they're there, one of the most horrific things that happens to these people is that they suffer cruel and unusual punishment. They are forced to look at the photos of these brutalized girls. Now, I'm a professional profiler. I've seen a whole lot of photos, videos of brutalized people. It's never pleasant, but I'm used to it. I can go, okay, and then I can eat a piece of pizza. These people have no training in this. They haven't chosen this as a profession. And they're forced to sit there and look at the gore, at the horror. And they're going like this. And they're traumatized. You're traumatizing innocent people. You're victimizing them by traumatizing them. They will never get those pictures out of their head. And they have no choice because they're forced into it by the government. So they have to deal with this horror. And some people say after a trial like this, that never left their minds ever again. It was always emblazoned in their brain. And I think that's cruel and unusual punishment for people who never committed a crime. Good citizens who are just going about their normal lives are suddenly snatched up, forced into servitude, and to watch this and to deal with this. And on top of that, because of the stress of this kind of thing, being forced into it, wanting to get back to family, not wanting to see anymore, not wanting to deal sometimes with the other jurors, I mean, you don't always have 11 other really great people. There can be some people in there who are very difficult to be around, shall we say. And that can get a juror to say, I can't take anymore. I'll go with the program. I'll be, if y'all, okay, fine. I'll agree with you just to get the hell out of here. And then, of course, you can always get that person who doesn't want to agree, that one person, because they love the power, they love the control, they like to be contrary, or maybe they're really sticking up for what's right. But it's a heck of a situation to put people in who didn't sign up for it. So there's 12 more victims in this case. And I just want to say to those 12 victims there, God bless you. I know you're going to do your best. And I just know that it's a horribly unfair situation. And I wish people would recognize that. And that's why I push for the professional jury system where people sign up to be trained, to go through all learning about profiling and forensics and all of that stuff that they need to learn. And then their names are put into whatever thing that is, and you pick it out and you might be at this trial or that trial. That's what I think. Anyway, those are my thoughts for today. So if you're new to this channel, please do like and subscribe. And if you want to hear more about this case, please do hit the bell for notifications and check my playlist for all the other stuff I do, because I don't do just one case. My thing is profiling many cases. So thank you for being here. And I'll be back again with part 3 as soon as I think there's something to talk about. Bye.